Hello everyone, good afternoon. So today I'll be taking a topic of acid suppressive drugs. This will be a micro review because I have to take cover all the acid suppressive drugs in a matter of 6 minutes. So in this stomach we have the hydrogen potassium pump. This is stimulated with histamine, and this produces H plus atoms which go into the stomach, and this is the acid. So the different drugs, the different classes of drugs that are available to suppress this acid production include the histamine receptor antagonists, which include ranitidine, famotidine, cimetidine, the proton pump inhibitors, which is a long list, commonly used are pantoprazole, rabeprazole, and esomeprazole. The antacids, which directly neutralize the acid within the stomach, they neutralize the H plus. They have either bicarbonate and they are based on either magnesium or aluminum. Examples are Digene or Mucinex, which we use. Cytoprotectives have a different mechanism of action. They coat the ulcer or the gastric mucosa and protect the gastric mucosa from the acid damage. And the others, but the newer drug which is coming up is a potassium pump blocker, which is vonoprazan. And this is already there in Japan. It will come in India in a few years. Out of all of these drugs, the most commonly used are the PPIs. And I'll be focusing my discussion on that. The H2RAs have been commonly used in the past. They are efficacious. The only problem is tachyphylaxis, which means that they act for 1 month, and within 1 month or 2 months, the body starts developing resistance to these drugs. Antacids are good, but they are used for intermittent usage when the patient develops symptoms which are not very severe or which are very infrequent. Sucralfate, again, it's useful as an add-on therapy or when intermittent dosing is required. So which are the indications? These are the drugs that almost all the specialties use. So which constitutes a rational use, which constitutes an irrational use. So rational use is when the patient has heartburn, regurgitation, or complications like peptic stricture, Barrett's esophagus. Patient has dyslexia. The patient would come and say acidity both high. Those are the patients which require this. Gastric and duodenal ulcers. Treatment of H. pylori. Upper GI bleeding from any cause, whether it is a variceal bleed, patient is having bleeding from the ulcer or from a tumor. A pH of more than 6 is required for proper clotting mechanism to get activated, and that is where it helps in patient with bleeding all the cases. So if you have a patient with bleeding, a coffee colored vomiters or melena, you can start them on PPI directly, and then later we can take a call on how much to bring it down. Eosinophilic esophagitis is a rare disease. Solenka syndrome, again a rare disease, and PPI used in very high doses. So there is good evidence for use of PPI in this indications. Poor use for indication, the poor evidence is there in patients with laryngitis or voice changes. In this patient, in the absence of evidence of reflux disease, studies have shown that they do not benefit. All the ENT specialists, they give these drugs in twice daily doses where it is not actually required. Chronic cough and asthma, again in the absence of evidence of reflux disease, either by symptoms or objective evidence on endoscopy or 24 pH study, again they do not have any benefit. Stress ulcer prophylaxis, about 50% of ICU patients are overprescribed PPIs. Proper indication for stress ulcer prophylaxis include patients who have coagulopathy, acute respiratory failure, liver cirrhosis with bleeding, or patients with acute renal failure, or patients who have taken NSAIDs or who have a past history of bleeding. Not all patients with ICU require prophylaxis. Not all patients who are prescribed with corticosteroids or antiplatelets require a co-prescription of PPIs. Patients with pancreatitis, they have vomiting and pain, but PPIs do not benefit in them. So what should all the physicians know? Number one, are all PPIs equal? Now practically, yes, all PPIs are equal. As far as gastroenterologists are concerned, there is some difference in efficacy. There are some difference in the pharmacokinetics as well as pharmacodynamics. But for practical purposes, I would say all of them are equal. So once daily use is usually sufficient to suppress the acid for more than 16 to 18 hours a day. Certain conditions where they are not responding properly to once daily do require twice daily dose. So always start in once daily, and then you can go ahead and make it twice daily. For dyspepsia, if they are not responding to once daily, there is no evidence that increasing the dose to double the dose will give any more benefit. Timing, they have to be taken on an empty stomach. Now, most of the physicians, I know they prescribe this properly, but just for everyone's sake, I will tell that you have to prescribe it in a way that they have to take it 30 to 45 minutes before they take anything, either the first thing in the morning or in the evening. You can change from one PPI to another. If patient on pantoprazole not responding, you can change to rabeprazole or esomeprazole or otherwise. So you can discontinue. There are a few mechanisms about how you can discontinue. You can make it intermittent. You can decrease the dosing. You can increase the interval from half dose to alternate day dosing, then twice a week dosing, and then you can stop it and only take it intermittently. Or you can give it at a low dose continuously. Pregnancy, it is pregnancy category B. It is safe to give, but we have to weigh the risk and benefit. Children, FDA approved are lansoprazole and omeprazole, but off-label, we use all the PPIs in the children. Combinations are very popular, but I would say you should avoid the combination as long as possible. All of these drugs have the side effects, particularly they prolong the QT interval. So for all cardiac patients, avoid the combinations. Drug interactions are there, but they are very few. Most important are nifedipine, digoxin, methotrexate, phenytoin, warfarin. Especially these are the drugs that are used with by cardiologists. So there are a couple of safety concerns, and this is the controversy that has come up with PPI in the last 2 or 3 years. And this is a long list of suspected side effects that the PPIs cause. A lot of this came from retrospective or from uncontrolled studies. They go from cancers to fractures to diabetes to vitamin deficiencies, dementia, nephrotoxicity, everything. So the latest evidence on this is that there is only one prospective study done on pantoprazole versus placebo for 3 years, and they found that only increase in the incidence of enteric infections was the only one which was statistically significant. The rest of all, like fractures, dementia, nephrotoxicity, they are all not much higher than placebo. So you do not worry about prescribing pantoprazole or all of these drugs in your patients. You can give them. There is a slight increase in incidence of enteric infection because, of course, acid is important to as a defense for these organisms. So the take-home message here is that we have to give the lowest effective dose for the shortest duration possible, and always review the indication periodically. Once the patient, if a patient સિચ્યુઅલમાં આવી ગયું પેન્ટોપ્રાઝોલ કે rabeprazole એના પછી કન્ટિન્યુ નહીં કરવાનું, અને દર વખતે રિવ્યુ કરવાનું whether the patient still requires it or not, and always try to reduce the dose or stop it and see. Thank you.